At least 8 Palestinians have been killed during raids by Israeli forces in the occupied West Bank. The troops raided refugee camps in the city of Tulkarm and in nearby Nur Shams. Israel says it was carrying out a counter-terrorism operation. Hamas says 2 members of its armed wing were killed. Hundreds of Palestinians and dozens of Israelis have been killed in the occupied West Bank since Hamas's terror attacks on Israel in October last year. The raids come as Israel's far-right finance minister is promising to annex more Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank. These settlements are considered illegal under international law. DW's Emily Gordine traveled to a small Bedouin community in al-Ahmar. People there say they are living with daily intimidation and uncertainty.
Perched on the hills east of Jerusalem lies a small Bedouin village called Khan al-Ahmar. It's home to just over 200 people and their livestock. Life here is becoming ever more precarious as Israelis seem emboldened by the war in Gaza. About 3 months ago, Israeli settlers built this illegal outpost just a few hundred meters away. From there, armed settlers come day and night, intimidating the residents of Khan al-Ahmar, says Haj Mohammed Ibrahim, the leader of the village.
They come in with bicycles, motorcycles and jeeps. They come into the houses and streets. When they arrive, it terrifies the young children.
In the distance, we too can see them roaming the hills. This is the school in Khan al-Ahmar. To get here, children from nearby have to walk across land now claimed by settlers. The rights organization Bezalel documented how this settler threatened some of the kids with his dogs. But Khan al-Ahmar is living with a bigger threat. This Bedouin community settled here after being expelled from the Negev in the 1950s. For years now, settlers have asked the courts and politicians to remove them from here too. Why? The area it is built in is designated Area C, part of the occupied West Bank administered by the Israeli military. It's also sandwiched between 2 major illegal Israeli settlements, Ma'ale Adumim and Kfar Adumim. Hagit Ofran says this area here is crucial to what she says are Israel's annexation plans. She's an activist at the Settlement Watch Project, which is part of the NGO Peace Now.
The plan of the Israeli government is to kick out the Palestinians from all the territory that is east of East Jerusalem. The heart of the West Bank is over here. We have the southern West Bank here, the northern up here, and this is the connection, the corridor for the Palestinians. Israel wants to have an Israeli corridor to cut the Palestinian continuity. So that's strategic. This is why they build Ma'ale Adumim. This is why they have now a plan to expand it even more.
Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich recently announced the confiscation of about 6,000 acres of land south of Ma'ale Adumim, which could translate into the expansion of the Israeli settlement. He has repeatedly called for the creation of facts on the ground in a bid to annex parts of the occupied West Bank. That's something many expect incoming US President Donald Trump to support.
I'm afraid that under Trump, there will be absolutely no restraint to our right-wing government and the Messianic settlements, that they will allow themselves to kick out systematically Palestinians from the West Bank, like Khan al-Ahmar community that is under threat, that all the legal preparations are done for their expansion.
For the residents of Khan al-Ahmar, this means more uncertainty. But they are adamant they want to stay.
For more on the situation, I'm joined now by Ksenia Svetlova in Modin, Israel. She is director of the Israel-Middle East Relations Program at Mitvim, and she's also a former member of the Knesset. Welcome to DW. Let's start with this first question. The report we just saw ended with the potential impact of President-elect Donald Trump. How might he reshuffle the situation in the West Bank?
Well, I think that nobody can tell you exactly today with the certainty what will be Donald Trump's policy on West Bank, Gaza, Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or basically any other issues. We know what he did last time when he used to be a president of the United States, and we know what he said during the campaign. But at the same time, I have to tell you that, of course, there are a lot of suspicions, and there is a lot of, given whom he nominated for the ambassador of the United States in Israel, a person who does not believe that there is an occupation and that there are settlements, that they are illegal. There are, of course, concerns. But I have to tell you that until the moment that he is there, and I think that in the right side of the Israeli political map, there are also concerns because he, in a bid to promote the Israeli-Saudi peace deal and eventually perhaps a Nobel Peace Prize for himself, Trump might not be as lenient as some of the people who support the settlement expansions believe that he will be. So there is a big question mark. For now it doesn't look too well, but we cannot know for sure.
This village mentioned in our report was set to be demolished back in 2017. That never happened. But now there are these settlers moving in. Is there a connection? Are they linked to the government in any way?
Everything that happens with the settlement activity in the West Bank is always linked to the government, always. And it was the case also back in the 70s when the settlement activity just started, because there was the green light. There was the understanding that the government will not send the army to evacuate all of them. So I can tell you that there is this spirit of grab whatever you can take with this government specifically, because we have radical elements in it, two parties that are the most dominant, the most strong parties. They are pro-settlement parties. And, they obviously believe that 2025 should be the year of sovereignty. This is what the Minister of Finance, Bezalel Smotrich, told to his constituency time and again. And therefore, I think that there is not only that there is connection, there is encouragement of this kind of steps. When you have somebody like Ben-Gvir, Minister of National Security, who is he's also living in one of the illegal settlements, also the Minister of Finance, Bezalel Smotrich, lives in another one. You have definitely a very clear green light from this government to, do some steps on the ground, change the reality.
We also witnessed, we should mention, raids in the West Bank today. How does this play into Israel's overall strategy in the West Bank?
The strategy is very simple. And I think that, again, this is right now, this is the ensemblement of the most radical spirit of the Israeli right wing of the political map and the society. Also, I think that we saw, similar developments also in the previous Netanyahu governments. I think that, this is clear that, from one hand, there is a free hand for the settlers. There is, of course, a military attempt to combat the terrorist groups that are rooted in the West Bank. And there is also a lot of work against the PA. There is a lot of incitement within the government against the PA, although the PA is now trying to do the same thing that Israel wants, which is combating the terror, specifically in Jenin camp. So when you combine all the...
Ksenia, we'll have to end it there. I'm sure there's much more territory we could cover. That's Ksenia Svetlova, Middle East analyst from Modin in Israel. Many, many thanks to you.
Thank you.
For more on the situation in the West Bank, I'm now joined by Akiva Eldar, political analyst and contributor to Haaretz, who's in Tel Aviv. He's also the author of the book Lords of the Land, The War for Israel's Settlements in the Occupied Territories. Akiva Eldar, welcome. I'm curious, the village mentioned in our report was set to be demolished back in 2017. That never happened. And now settlers are moving in. What do the settlers aim to achieve there?
Well, things have changed in the last few years. We have the most radical coalition government in Israel. And I think there is nobody in the opposition that really cares about what they're doing. You can actually hardly see the kind of reports that you are airing now on Israeli mainstream television. Israel is still stuck in October 7th of 23, and we don't hear much now, of course, from the incumbents in Washington. And I am also at the same time hoping that, unlike what my friend Hagit Ofran said, that President Trump will surprise us. He made sure that Netanyahu will refrain from annexing Area C, and in return, he paved the way for the Abraham Accords with the Gulf countries and with Morocco. President Trump is obsessed with the fact that he didn't receive the Nobel Prize, which Obama did. And I will not be surprised if he will try to bring in Saudi Arabia, and in return, Netanyahu will have to offer something to the Palestinians.
I want to get to that a little bit deeper, but first you mentioned a radical government, as you put it. Is there a connection? Are these settlers linked to the government in any way, or simply just the government allowing them to do what they want to do?
No, they are the government, my friend. If you would have told me when I wrote the book on the settlers 20 years ago, that one day you will talk to me about Ben-Gvir and Smotrich being members of the Israeli inner cabinet, not just members of the government or the cabinet. I would ask you what kind of drugs you're taking. And now they are holding Netanyahu in his neck, and they are not even hiding their plans. It's part of Smotrich's party plan to make sure that either the Palestinians will surrender and will accept the Israeli military government with a kind of an official apartheid regime, or they will have to leave. It's no wonder that their best friends are the American Christian Zionists, the people who believe in Armageddon, and they contribute to the settlers. And there is no impunity. There is no international impunity. And even, as I mentioned before, the members of the Arab Accords, the Gulf countries and Morocco, are still not doing anything to put more pressure on Israel to stop what they're doing in al-Ahmar. And even today it was reported in Haaretz that they don't stop in Area C. They are starting to move into Area B, which is under Palestinian civil authority.
Right. We didn't get to dive deeper into what a Trump administration might be, but I think you explicitly stated it there. That is a political analyst and contributor to Haaretz, Akiva Eldar in Tel Aviv. Many thanks for your time and particularly your perspective.
My pleasure.
With me now is Laura Blumenfeld, Middle East analyst and senior fellow at Johns Hopkins University in the U.S. Laura, this idea that Israel might illegally annex the Palestinian West Bank, it's been debated in Israel for a long time now. Do you think the conditions are there for it to happen in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating report, and you're right that there's internal debate in Israel. The activist who was cited there is an Israeli Jew. I mean, there are Israelis on all sides of this issue, and it goes back generations. I mean, arguably back to the Bible. I think as we turn the corner to the Trump presidency, there are two camps. There are the annexationists who would support a move by the Israeli settlers to take that land. And then there are the normalization camp, those who want to see the Abraham Accords expanded for Israel to reach out and make peace with Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia has been very clear that for them to make peace with Israel, their precondition would be a Palestinian state. So I think there's going to be a real debate, not only in Israeli society that we've seen, but also in the Trump camp Trump is popular in Israel. He's polling twice as high as Israel's prime minister, Netanyahu. And so Netanyahu is really kind of on the hook with Trump. There's nowhere for him to run and hide. It's not like in the Biden presidency where Netanyahu could appeal to the Republican Congress, because in this case, Republican Congress is likely to be lockstep with Trump on this issue.
So the far right in Israel, it sounds like, is counting on Trump for backing of this plan. But it sounds like to me that you're saying that Trump may have more say in this in some ways than Netanyahu himself.
I'm also saying not so fast. Don't get drunk on Trump, because he's keeping everyone guessing. He likes it that way. He also is desperate for deals. He's a deal maker, and he'd like to make that peace deal, that normalization deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and create a defense pact between the United States and Saudi Arabia while he's at it. That's in our interest as a way to deter an increasingly aggressive Russia and also China, who's our main adversary in the Middle East for influence, especially with the wealthy Gulf states. So, yeah, I would say it's not clear at all that Trump is going to go for annexation. I mean, one sign that he might be kind of favoring that kind of notion that Israelis and Jews, in fact, are the true indigenous people in the West Bank, going back to the Bible, is his appointment of the American ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, who, cites the Old Testament when he says that Jews are the rightful owners of that land. So we're going to have to wait and see, which is exactly how President Trump wants it to be.
So we're talking about Trump's strategy in the region. What about Israel's strategy in the region? I mean, Israel's been walking this line for years of controlling the West Bank and building on it without officially annexing it. What's behind that strategy? And just briefly, what would change if they came out and said, this land is now ours, it's officially Israel?
It has been for years. I mean, when I worked under President Obama on the Israeli-Palestinian negotiating team, I visited that village. That was in 2014. It was an issue then. It's an issue today. I think that the bigger problem, it's not just the ideologues who are pushing for pushing against a Palestinian state on those lands. It's also just your average Israeli after the attacks, after the slaughter of October 7th in 2023. Your average Israeli is really afraid that a Palestinian state in the West Bank could turn into a launching pad for jihadi attacks. And the hostages who are still languishing in Gaza, the folks who are living, the Israelis along the border with Gaza now, they were among the most liberal, sort of pro-Palestinian state of the Israelis. And so it's just a tough time for everyone. It's going to take someone like President Trump, I think, to kind of lay down some laws, and we'll see, where we can go for there. I think a strong president will have a lot of leverage over Prime Minister Netanyahu, and Netanyahu can use that to push back against his own right-wing members of his cabinet.
Laura Blumenfeld, thanks. We're gonna have to leave it there. A lot of tough theories. We're gonna have to see how they play out. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.